Okay, thank you for joining us, everyone. Welcome to our meeting of the Metropolitan Water District Representatives Caucus, a special meeting of the Board of Directors of West Basin. And I want to call this meeting to order. If our staff could please administer a roll call.
Happy to do that. We'll have our board secretary begin.
Certainly. Director Alvarez, Director Gray.
Here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Deere. And Director Houston.
Here. Okay, so we do have a quorum. I'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? EJ?
Vice President Houston, we do not have any requests for public comment. I do see that we have a number of guests joining us today. If I could ask if anybody here would like to make comment under public comment, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand at the very top portion of the platform. Vice President Houston, I do not see any requests, though I did want to make a staff comment. Clearly, we do not have our general manager here today, Greg Reed. He sends his regards as he could not be here. He's also asked me to note that just a few days ago was the beginning of Filipino American History Month. So we here at West Basin are going to continue to celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month through the 15th. And of course, recognize the Filipino American History Month as well. And he also asked me to note that today we wanted to recognize the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, EJ. And I also want to welcome all of our guests. I see a lot of folks on here, and I probably can't see everybody, so we appreciate you being here. I am going to ask the staff, because I don't have the agenda physically in front of me at this moment, and I see it here on the screen, so you guys can help me move along. But with that, I think we're on item 4, which it says here MWD consent calendar, some sort of an action. So why don't you go ahead and take that away, EJ?
Yes, thank you very much. Item 4A is related to the adoption of a resolution encouraging action to reduce or eliminate irrigation of non-functional turf with potable water. And for this presentation, we do have Metropolitan Water District staff, Krista Guerrero, the Associate Resource Specialist.
Thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. I'm happy to discuss with you an item that we recently brought to our One Water Committee meeting for action, which will be going to board soon in October. Which is a resolution that encourages municipalities to ban the irrigation of non-functional turf. Next slide, please. Previous efforts in this area, we have brought before the board several options to address non-functional turf within our service area. And before we went into the resolution, we did want to give an update on the efforts for the other options that were provided. The board was interested in all 4 of the options that we brought to them, and so staff is continuing to work on all of those options. The first is an incentive-based option where we are using recently rewarded grant funds to be added to our turf replacement program incentive to drive more activity to our commercial rebate program. And we're continuing to pursue additional grant opportunities. So wanting to use our incentives to remove non-functional turf in our area. The next option was a new water allocation methodology for non-functional turf during a drought emergency, similar to the one that we have now with the State Water Project dependent area. We are working with Dr. Marks to develop a database, a turf dashboard that will assist member agencies in calculating the amount of non-functional turf within their service area. And we are also at the same time looking at some of the other data that we would need in order to change our water allocation methodology. The third option is a state legislation that would be proposed or led by Metropolitan that would ban the watering of non-functional turf within our service area. The Legislative Affairs team has added this item to their strategic plan for the 2022-2023 year, and we are currently actively working on the wording and directive for that legislation. Next slide, please. But the action that was before board was the non-functional turf ordinance development and resolution. Next slide. When we went forth with this process, we did start with some lessons learned from Southern Nevada Water Authority legislative efforts. One is that it was determined that ordinances and legislation are most effective when they're combined with incentives to promote change. If the funding is not there to assist, then the ordinances and legislation tend to be less effective. It was also understood that legislation is a multi-year effort. It takes a long time. And so an ordinance is a wonderful way to create a stopgap or to start the process of having a non-functional turf be addressed in our service area. And thirdly is that they chose a different route for their non-functional turf definition. They chose to define functional turf and then to state that non-functional turf was anything that didn't meet that definition. Metropolitan did choose a different path, and you'll see that next. Next slide, please. So for our definition of non-functional turf, we developed a definition that was similar to the State Water Resource Control Board definition from the emergency regulation. And it also allows our flexibility for municipalities to adjust. So as they adopt their own ordinances, they can make changes to that definition as necessary. The definition includes that this ban is for potable water irrigation only. So non-functional turf is only turf that is irrigated by potable water, not recycled or reclaimed water. That it is commercial, institutional, and industrial turf that's not used for recreation or community gathering purposes. So it does include homeowners associations for any area that would be deemed not a community space. And it only would include new residential construction. So current residential turf would not be included in this definition. Next slide, please. The way that the ordinance works that we have developed is that it would fit right into this water efficiency ordinances that cities already have in place. Most have a permanent ban section, so the language could just be added directly into that section. The sample language will be adjustable, and it goes along with the Metropolitan Board resolution that encourages the adoption of this language. Next slide. The way to look at the ordinance language that was developed is more of a menu of options. So there are several options that a city or municipality could include in their ordinance. One of those being the most important, the permanent ban on the irrigation of non-functional turf with potable water. But it could also include options such as a permanent ban on the installation of non-functional turf on new development, and that would be both residential and commercial. A removal of non-functional turf on commercial properties by a specific date that the city or municipality could set, and a section for the city or municipality to add their own enforcement actions and timelines. Next slide, please. So the One Water Committee did adopt and pass this resolution that encourages this action to reduce or eliminate the irrigation of non-functional turf with potable water. And the resolution will now go to the full board for adoption this month. And that is my presentation today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Krista. Have any questions?
Well, thank you.
Sorry, everybody, my camera is acting up. Here I am. But yeah, thank you for that presentation, and thank you, EJ. Does anybody have any questions at this moment? It didn't sound like it.
No, thank you.
And so,
Dr. Houston,
yeah, go ahead.
if I might add, I just wanted to recognize some of the efforts that have been put into this. Several of the MET member agencies have worked in a pretty collaborative working group that was organized through the Association of California Water Agencies. And that effort was led by, I believe, Eastern Municipal Water District, but obviously Kathy Viatella played a significant role in it. There was a lot of different agencies kind of exploring this option of pursuing legislation similar to what was done in Southern California. So it's great to see, obviously, Metropolitan Water District take a lead in this effort and really push this initiative. West Basin staff participated throughout that process, and we were hopeful that there would be a little bit more traction, but you know, as you look at Southern California and of course statewide, there are different communities that have different thoughts on the use of non-functional turf. So
Sure, great. Thank you for that clarification. And I will just say that I like what you all looked at, the flexibility of it. It does seem to accommodate those different viewpoints to a degree, so it's not quite a one size fits all. I think it seems more accommodating for Southern California versus obviously Nevada. I guess quick question to our own staff here, because this is an action item on this agenda. So do we need to do anything specific, EJ, or is this just a presentation?
This is just a presentation. Obviously, the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors will have an option of pursuing this. And then, of course, each member agency can possibly mirror this action or promote these options throughout their communities as well.
Okay, excellent. Good. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to do anything on that on our item. So I don't hear any other questions. So I really want to say thank you, Krista, for the presentation. And if that's all, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
Yes, Vice President Houston. The next item that we have is item 5A, and I'm very excited to present this item. And I would offer this to our guests that you'll probably see this item return as things develop and Metropolitan Water District continues to make more progress. But this is an update on outreach and research for the Pure Water Southern California program. It's exciting to know that so much progress is being made. And I wanted to also point out that West Basin Municipal Water District did have a bit of a field trip last week where nearly our entire staff got to visit Pure Water Southern California and really learn a lot from the Metropolitan Water District staff. So for today's presentation, we do have two Metropolitan Water District staff members. We do have Heather Collins, a engineer, water treatment section manager. And then we also have Ana Reyes, the senior environmental specialist.
Good afternoon. I guess that you're turning it to us, yes.
I
think so. Both Anna and I are going to be giving oral updates today on the research and demonstration efforts for Pure Water Southern California, and Anna's going to more specialize and talk about the outreach and the environmental scoping process that we have just entered in. We do give quarterly updates to the Metropolitan Board of Directors on our program, and so those materials are available, and there's a new landing page and additional information on our webpage under Pure Water Southern California that you can find a lot of the detail, very transparent with all of our communications on the regulatory front and what we're doing with testing and monitoring at the facility, demonstration facility down in Carson. We do operate this half MGD demonstration facility as a measure for gathering data for what we need for our regulatory purposes in order to seek technology acceptance and approval, and to gather data as we are entering in, design phases of, what we need to grab for criteria, ranges of parameters. It helps us identify opportunities for operational strategies. And we're really, even though we've been working together with our partner, Los Angeles County Sanitation District, for over a decade on pilot and demonstration types of testing to get to this point, we actually have this facility now. And our partner agency, LACSD, also has a number of pilot modes and skids that they run to help us with what's going on in their facility as well. So presently, we are in our third year of demonstration plant operations. We are running a configuration that involves membrane bioreactors, reverse osmosis, and UV disinfection with advanced oxidation. That's the pilot, the demonstration process train. All of that water we do produce goes back to the headworks of the joint regional plant of LACSD down at Carson. We are working through what we call our membrane bioreactors can run in various different modes. It's what we've set this facility up with, where we can test.
You're about to eat it, huh?
And right now we're operating in what we call an MBR mode, where we're testing and taking in primary effluent from the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts and running it through this mode. And we were very successful with the seeding of these reactors. We had a brief shutdown after 2 years of testing where we reseeded the reactors. So we're getting good nitrogen reduction, definitely meeting those targets that we're looking at. And then now we're running through getting up to baseline testing for this next mode of operational testing that we have approval from the regulators, both Division of Drinking Water, and we're working with the regional boards. We are very proactive in meeting with them on our status, on our updates, and also with our scientific advisory panel as we come up with data. We have a lot of data from that pathogen standpoint and where we're seeking the levels of removal through technology acceptance of the MBR. MBRs, you might know and be aware that they're pretty resident in wastewater treatment, but maybe not so resident in the area of water reuse purification. And so that is new work, and we're working towards melding the data and the models that they have established their regulations on and trying to, introduce this new data set that we feel can be more advantageous and give us greater removals and greater credit for the technology that we're using. With the efforts that we've been working on with the sanitation districts, they have an interest of looking at concentrate management and what is a reuse system and a treatment like this do for their system. And also from the nitrogen management standpoint, this is a project ultimately that will go to recharge groundwater basins and also have an opportunity to be potentially reused in a direct potable fashion where we would take water to the headworks of one of Metropolitan's existing treatment plants or multiple. And so you're looking at receiving waters, receiving basins. And so there's definitely targets that we're trying to look at because they do a non-nitrified high purity oxygen system right now with their product water. So we're working together on the efforts collectively of how those systems and those potential, changes that they might be looking at on their side, how that would impact, the demonstration plant operations and ultimately full scale. We certainly have a lot of work in front of us, but it's certainly one that's beneficial with the input for the regulators and the panels, giving us kind of a barometer of where we're at, what we're looking at, what we're seeing. We do know that there's a lot of work on the post stabilization, once you get a product, making sure that it is conducive for steady state operations in a downstream system. That work will be in front of us, but something that is on our agenda. We're developing a lot of innovative microbial sampling. It's very intensive and time consuming to gather samples for pathogen analysis and microbial analysis. We've done a lot of groundbreaking work with our laboratory staff in Laverne, coupled with the laboratory staff that's at the sanitation districts. That work has gone into publication and received very high accolades from our panel of scientific advisors and those regulators that are with us in our program. I know that there are many opportunities for your agencies and everyone to get down to the Pure Water Southern California demonstration facility, and we're glad to have West Basin with us last week, and they got a tour and a real in-depth technical dive into what we're working on. So with that, I'm going to pivot over and let Anna talk about the environmental work that we've been working on and our new exciting notice of preparation that just went out. And she'll talk a little bit about those outreach scoping activities as well. Anna?
Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon, and thanks for having us. My name is Ana Reyes. I am at Metropolitan's Environmental Planning section. I am filling in for Rupam Soni, which I think most of you know, and I'm glad you were able to tour the demo plant. I'm not in outreach, but I will try to impart the level of knowledge and enthusiasm that Rupam has on this topic. So Metropolitan has prepared the notice of preparation of a draft environmental impact report. The NOP, if you're not familiar, is what kicks off our scoping phase, which began last Friday on September 30th, and it will extend to November 14th. The scoping phase is intended for the public to provide input in developing the scope and content of the environmental impact report, which many of you know is the EIR. The NOP, or notice of preparation, sorry if I'm using acronyms, you can raise your hand and ask me to say the entire term, but the NOP was posted and mailed out last week. So to start the scoping phase on September 30th, and it was sent out to interested parties, required public agencies. We also emailed member agency managers and board members regarding its availability, along with the link for more information. As Heather mentioned, there is a landing page for scoping that will give you all the information you need, including the notice of preparation, and you can print it out. There's a PDF option. Metropolitan has conducted extensive outreach for the program. So I will speak just regarding the scoping phase, since our external affairs has actually conducted extensive outreach before the scoping phase. For the scoping phase, we developed a website that's dedicated just to the scoping process, with information on how to become involved and how to submit comments, including a video explaining, the process and how to do this. We've mailed postcards, we've sent out an email blast, we've added content on social media sites, we're putting up flyers at libraries and other publicly accessible locations. All told, we've directly notified well over 2,000 individuals and organizations, probably closer to 2,500. And that is not including the postings with the counties or the ads in the newspapers. We are holding 4 scoping meetings at various times of the week and day to accommodate diverse schedules. There's a minimum of 1 scoping meeting required. We opted for 4 to try to meet people where they are. Many of the outreach materials have been translated in Spanish. There will be live Spanish and ASL translation at each of the scoping meetings, with the ability of other languages with advance notice. We are attending multiple community events to provide information, and have created postcards for the public to submit their comments on site, or they could mail them in. So that's just another option for them to be able to, take something, fill it in, and submit it very easily. As a matter of fact, we were at the Carson Jazz Festival last weekend. I heard that was really fun, and I'm sorry I missed it. And then we decided on the extending our scoping phase rather than the 30-day minimum scoping phase. We extended it to 45 days to give the public more time to become informed about the program and provide input. If you have any questions, that's my update.
Well, let me ask, any questions at this moment, anybody, or Anna, were you still continuing?
Nope.
Oh, no,
think
okay.
that's it.
Oh, you're done. Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Heather and Anna. So you're both finished, correct?
Correct. Unless
Okay,
there's
wonderful.
questions.
Great. Yeah, let me open it up to questions, because I think this is an extremely timely topic for everybody. I know personally right now I'm getting a lot of interest in this because it is basically in our backyard. Even City of El Segundo, last night at the city council meeting, some of the council members were asking questions. So I would expect or hope that there might be some questions here. If anybody has any questions, could you please let me or EJ know?
Director Houston, I actually do have a question.
You have a canned question?
No, it's actually, as I was listening to her present on the item, it kind of occurred to me that the process in which Metropolitan Water District is exploring this, while at the same time, the State Water Resources Control Board is in the process of adopting, hopefully by the end of this year, uniform water recycling criteria for raw water augmentation. And as this facility does contemplate the use of recycled water for potable reuse, obviously, but potentially direct potable reuse, are there any of your studies and the research that you're doing, is that going hand in hand with the draft regulations?
Yes, thank you for the question. And we have been very engaged with the regulators on the developing draft criteria as it's been presented to their panels, and a number of other water agencies that are involved with reuse. We have sort of a working group, both through Water Reuse Association and through our technical exchanges with utilities, to talk about these issues, about how workable they are, give scenarios, give some suggested feedback in language changes, or give them perspectives on, project-like scenarios, and, are they going to be amenable to the black and white words that they're creating? We in what I mentioned about the data, the amount of data that we're collecting for pathogen information, that is one area. The regulations do require certain removal rates, and we've brought a number of data to them with conclusions really showing that the baseline from which they're utilizing and talking about the reference for what they're looking for, we think needs to be opened up. We think we funded, water utilities did fund a lot of research for their direct potable initiatives, and they asked for the work to be done, and we've done the work, and now we would like to see incorporation of the data to meld in at least the prior data and couple that with the newer data that's available. That's definitely a speaking point and a talking point that we've emphasized with them, and many of the other agencies have emphasized as well. What they do with that, we'll ultimately have to see. We do expect that there's going to be another draft prior to the end of the year. They do still have a year to get the regulation adopted. And so right now it's more critical, as this is the opportunity to have the discussions on scenario-based examples to help them hone in on the suggested language and references that they should include. In addition, other areas of that regulation, there's always been opportunities for different types of varieties of a different substitution. You have what the law says and the reg says, but there's always alternatives. We call them alternatives clauses. And we're working with them to expand the alternatives clause for this regulatory packet. They're kind of constraining it to just chemical constituents. We want them to open it up further on the pathogen microbial side to have greater acceptability on alternatives there. Because one thing that is for certain is when they do adopt a regulatory package, it will probably be another few decades before they reopen it. And so you want to be able to be nimble with developing technology. Some of these projects have not even started to operate in California yet. So as we operate and gather data and get more information, we want to not just be looking at the options that they wrote 10, 20 years ago. So we feel that that's a little bit more flexible and amenable, and works with regulations to avoid having to reopen just to enter something in. But if they have the alternatives on both sides for pathogen, in addition to chemical, then we think it makes it more flexible. We've talked to them about staffing and certification requirements, monitoring plans, and plans that they want developed for these systems, giving details or talking about how we can streamline it, how we can be efficient, different types of requirements for assessment in the watersheds and collections, and online systems online analyzers and the readiness and the availability of such things. So these are some of the areas that we've been talking with them about and having active discussions. And there's, like I mentioned, there's those agencies that are involved with water reuse to the extent where their projects have a proposal for direct potable, either through and before a treatment facility, or maybe even after, what we call treated water augmentation, more of a pipe to pipe scenario. Anyone that's involved in that space has been involved with these discussions. And then certainly those agencies within for Metropolitan and Los Angeles County Sanitation, those that we have the letters of intent and agreement with to work together with technical exchange and take in those suggested content. So we're working hard on making sure that we get the best regulation possible that we can work with.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Heather and Anna. And you're not quite off the hook yet, because I know we're going to try and expedite time, and I really don't think there's any other questions. I have a couple really fast, maybe rapid fire questions, and part of it's to remind us. So can you remind me what's the current volume of wastewater going through the LA County sanitation facility, and then what your proposed project will do?
Certainly. Right now, the joint regional plant for Carson for LACSD, I believe has a nameplate rating of about 420. I think right now they're kind of taking in about 260 million gallons a day. Our proposed project is 150 million gallons per day through the advanced water purification facility.
Okay, perfect. Because again, so right now, when we think about what's going on over here at the Hyperion facility and what we do at West Basin, these are, the numbers get thrown around. And so people are very interested in what the volume currently is at the Carson plant, let alone what the proposal is. You mentioned it a bit, but and because especially staffing and monitoring, but when you go full scale with this operation, are you going to have an on-site lab at the facility? Is that?
Thank you for that question. In our planning right now, we have talked about laboratory identification at the facility. It's currently sort of in the ancillary planning and the layout. What we're doing internally also is looking at the needs and capacities of our metropolitan facility in Laverne and looking how to best have a balance of what we need on site for operational control and what we need long-term for drinking water and wastewater compliance, or reuse compliance, if you will, and coupled with, what LACSD lab capacities are and what processes that they might be more so in operational control of, and what we might be doing. So it's an active conversation, but it is in the planning development right now to have one there on site.
Okay, good. I think that West Basin will probably monitor what you all are doing, because obviously we look at what we're doing at our facility, let alone the future at EDC Little and Hyperion, and also knowing that there's not a lot of places that we can outsource this work to. So if we're going to go into the realm of DPR, I think we have to understand what resources need to be physically on the ground at the plants, and so especially to reassure our public. So I think that that's going to be something for us as directors. We want to make sure we understand thoroughly from you all, the professional staff. And my one last question, I think you alluded to it, but again, because I'm out in the community a lot right now, and we're getting a lot of questions. It's the drought, and when we're really focused on the future of water reuse as a huge part of the solution to this permanently in our area, folks are asking, when will we actually be able to do some direct potable reuse? And I know that gets thrown around a lot, but do you all have sort of a prediction you could say when that might actually work, rather than just going into the ground?
So we do have various project schedules, and ultimately it'll be the decision of Metropolitan and LACSD board as far as what phases and to what extent a project gets built to. So with that, right now, we do have a preliminary schedule of things where we're looking at some early development and early start projects surrounding the Carson area within, say, a 10-mile radius rather. And that's mainly, Title 22 irrigation or other types of uses that are more like of the groundwater recharge and Title 22 refinery industrial uses. When you get to the point of talking about direct, we do have in sort of phasing of our project, ultimately, we have, it kind of breaks it up. We do look at the first part of our project and are incorporating a portion of that for DPR that would be proposed to be brought up the backbone pipeline and over to the headworks of the Weymouth treatment plant in Laverne. And that would be a portion of flow where the amount of treatment that would be needed in addition to that for groundwater recharge would be minimized, but still an expenditure. If the board of directors wanted to choose to not phase a project and have the greater scope and the greater amount of DPR through water augmentation, that would require additional treatment investment to be either located maybe at Carson, at a satellite facility, or at the Weymouth facility of Metropolitan. And so it's a function of those are different types of treatment that we have now. You could look to phase those. Obviously, with those, that's more money in cost estimation. And so and with a higher level of certifications too. So there's a lot of different options that we are looking at. So if you did look at that first option where you're looking at maybe a small amount of DPR water in the project, that could be maybe in about 10 years in 2032, potentially, if things proceeded as scheduled right now.
Okay, very good. I thank you, and I put you on the spot. So I think with that, because I want to make sure we give plenty of time to our next speakers, but to both of you, thank you so much. This is a very interesting conversation. I know that we're going to keep on discussing this, and obviously, you're right there in West Basin service area with this, but there's tremendous interest right now on that project in the communities at least where I live. So I want to make sure I inform my residents to the best of my ability. With all of that, let's thank you, ladies, very much. And let's go ahead and move to our next item. EJ.
To see you there and to see you.
Yes, thank you, Vice President Houston. The next item is item 5D, update on the Colorado River 500+ plan. And for this presentation, we do have Shanti Rosette, the Colorado River Resources Policy Manager with Metropolitan Water District.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about the 500+ plan. The 500+ plan is an effort that the 3 lower basin states of Arizona, California, and Nevada announced in partnership with the United States in December last year. The intent was to keep Lake Mead above the critical elevation of 1,020 feet. The goal of this plan is to add at least 500,000 acre-feet to Lake Mead in both 2022 and 2023. The 500+ plan was adopted in response to the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan requirement to consult whenever the Bureau of Reclamation's 24-month study shows that Lake Mead would fall to an elevation of 1,030 feet in the minimum probable scenario at any time in the next 2 years. That 1030 consultation trigger was first hit in August of last year, when water managers in Arizona, Nevada, and California began discussing options to keep Lake Mead above the critical reservoir elevation of 1,020 feet. The non-federal funding partners and federal parties both agreed to commit $100 million for a total of $200 million to be made available to fund conservation projects. Metropolitan committed to $20 million. Modeling done in 2021 showed that adding 500,000 acre feet to Lake Mead in 2022 would add 6 feet in reservoir elevation. So far, the 500+ plan has been used to fund approximately 230,000 acre feet of new conservation in 2022. Metropolitan's programs included conservation in the Palo Verde and Barred Water districts, totaling around 62,000 acre feet this year, adding to the 47,000 acre feet conserved in 2021. Most of the rest of the conservation has come from projects in Arizona, the largest of which are with the Gila River Indian community, which are on target to conserve 91,000 acre feet in 2022. But as you've heard me say before, the elevation of Lake Mead has continued to decline. In August of this year, Lake Mead was more than 10 feet lower than the most probable forecast in August of last year. This despite the more than 200,000 acre feet of additional conservation done as part of the 500+ plan this year. Lake Mead has declined so much over the last year for 2 reasons. First is the below average runoff into the system. Even though precipitation was average this year, runoff was just 63% of the 30-year average. The other reason is the Interior Department's action announced in May that reduced releases from Lake Powell to just 7 million acre feet this year to keep Lake Powell above the critical elevation of 3,490 feet. And even with the shortages and DCP contributions, deliveries to the lower basin and Mexico from Lake Mead will be over 8 million acre feet in calendar year 2022, resulting in the continued decline of Lake Mead. The declining levels of Lake Powell and Lake Mead were addressed in the Bureau of Reclamation Commissioner's testimony to the Senate in June, when she called on the Colorado River Basin states to develop a consensus plan to add or conserve 2 to 4 million acre feet in 2023, and to develop that plan by August 16th. As of August 16th, the basin states had not developed a consensus plan, and in response, the Gila River Indian community announced that it would not participate in the 500+ plan next year. This announcement reduced the likelihood that the 500+ plan will be successful in retaining 500,000 acre feet in Lake Mead in 2023. More needs to be done to stabilize the elevation of Lake Mead. And the good news is that the Inflation Reduction Act passed this summer included $4 billion to be made available to tribes and public entities through the Bureau of Reclamation for drought mitigation, with a priority to be given to the Colorado River Basin. And the Interior Department has stated that part of that money will be available for system conservation for 2023. So even though there aren't a lot of projects signed up for the 500+ plan for 2023, there may be new conservation projects that choose to participate through the federal funding instead. And the Colorado River Board of California sent a letter to the Interior Secretary today announcing that California is working to develop voluntary projects that could conserve an additional 400,000 acre feet of water next year. This concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shanti. Any questions out there? Well, I don't hear any. I guess, oh, hold on, Russ. Let me get you one sec. Actually, Russ, why don't you go ahead? Go ahead and ask your question, please. Director LaFay.
So Shanti, this doesn't sound really terrific, but I have a sort of a different go in a different direction. Are we looking at the threat? Threat might be the right word. The idea that we would have to start looking at evaporation in the future. What are we doing? Anything? Are we looking at that?
Yes, Director LaFay, we are discussing that internally. That was first raised by some of the other basin states, specifically Nevada, when the August 24-month study was announced about 6 weeks ago. And since then, there has been additional discussion by the 6 other basin states about looking for the Department of Interior to develop an assessment charge for evaporation and potentially seepage and system losses. And the impacts to Metropolitan's water supply and California's allocation could be significant. California overall has the potential to lose 800,000 acre feet or more per year from its allocation if those system losses were assessed to the state. And the Department of Interior has announced their intent to begin an administrative action to look into this, but we haven't gotten any further detail on it. Metropolitan staff will be very involved in the development of that.
Yeah, I guess so. Is there any estimate as to when any impact we might see?
The Assistant Secretary for Water and Science has said that they plan to take the actions necessary administratively to advance any of these assessments in 2023, with them to be applied in 2024.
Thank you. Terrific job, by the way. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Director.
Great, thank you, Director. Any other questions out there? Well, seeing none, I'll ask one last one, Shanti, is, I mean, obviously they're in negotiations still, you know, and I know that the federal government gave a little bit of a reprieve, correct? So what's the status now at this moment? Where are these deadlines being pushed back to at this time?
So there is no current deadline for the states to come up with the volumes that were identified by the commissioner in June. They have moved back from that, and they have instead pivoted to the announcements of the intent to initiate the administrative actions necessary to take for assessing those system losses potentially. They've also announced that they'll be developing greater, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the term that they use, but they're going to look into the beneficial uses in all sectors because the Secretary currently has the authority under federal regulations to cut water orders if the Secretary decides that they're in excess of what the beneficial reasonable use would be. And so they are going to be reassessing that. There again is potential for agricultural districts in particular to have their water orders cut. They said that they plan to have those in place, you know, administratively for 2024, but didn't rule out cutting water orders in 2023. So they've kind of shifted away from the deadlines and instead are announcing that we should expect these actions will be ready to be taken unilaterally in 2024. Okay. And we've also announced today that California contractors are working to develop 400,000 acre feet of conservation for 2023. That would go towards that goal of reducing uses and the drawdown in Lake Mead for next year in a significant way.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's why we definitely have these meetings, so we get the information, but also it shows you a lot is at stake right now in the next 1 to 2 years with people working together to hopefully make some good decisions. So I think I don't see any other questions. And with that, I want to say thank you, Shanti, for your presentation and being here as always. I will ask our Assistant General Manager, EJ Caldwell, do we have anything else at this time on this item or another item?
No, Vice President Houston, that concludes our discussion items and brings us to our item number 6, which is director's comments and future agenda items.
Okay, very good. All right, well, thank you. And I'll open up the floor to my colleagues. So I see Director Williams is in our boardroom. If Director Williams, have any future agenda items or comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, very good. And I think Director Gray, Chair Gray was on the phone. I don't know if she has any comments. I don't hear any. I will just say, I think this was an excellent meeting, good information, extremely timely. I just did a presentation last night to the El Segundo City Council, and the questions that were coming up were definitely about the Colorado River and the strain system, as we are looking, of course, at the future of water reuse as a big part of permanent solutions to this long stemming crisis, if you will. So again, there's a lot of interest, I think, in our communities. They're looking for the right answers. They're depending on the water managers. And then, as you just informed us, there's a lot at stake between the federal government and the state and local jurisdictions. So these are extremely timely reports. I want to say thank you to everybody who is here on the call and in person. And
Hello.
with that, yes, oh, there's the Chairwoman Gray.
I
So
got it unmuted. Thank you, Chair.
no problem. Do you have any comments or future agenda items?
Just comments with thanking all the presenters today, and thank you for that. I don't have any other future agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And I don't really have any future agenda items at this moment, but I think that we will continue the dialogue with Met to understand the context of the facility and the science and what is transpiring, because that's going to play a big role for us regionally and locally. So I'm looking forward to those continued conversations with Met from West Basin. So with that, I will prepare to adjourn this meeting. It says our next scheduled meeting will be on November 2nd, 2022. So thanks everybody for being here. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Director Houston.